If Arsenal loses to PSG this week, are they the most disappointing runner-up in Premier League history? Lost
They're
the lead
losing, right? I think they're down 1-0.
1-0 going back to Paris,
Ooh.
but they lost the league with 4 matches to play. They crashed out of both cups. Well, let's see, one they were in the semifinals, and the other was quarters, I think.
Is it really disappointing if it's expected?
Okay, so who has the more disappointing season? Arsenal, United, or Spurs?
I would say Spurs.
It's probably Spurs because wait, so who United is in the finals of the Europa?
And so is Spurs. Yeah.
So
Well,
they play
they both have one foot in the door. They both
They're
have big leagues or big
yeah,
leads in the semifinal.
so they'll play each other.
Yeah.
Like I know it's a cop out answer, but it's whoever loses that. Because whoever wins gets a spot in the Champions League, which feels weird.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder but I think Amarin has more of a leash, but I wonder if Ange is back if Spurs win the Europa League. I mean,
You
they
wonder if he's
are,
back if they win.
yeah. I don't think he's back if they don't win. I think he's fired because they are close to setting their like club all-time loss in a season record. I think they're two away with three to play.
they can't get relegated. So,
Right.
but what if Tottenham finishes above Man U in the Premier League?
15th. Yeah.
To me, I think it's Spurs because they they had a pretty decent start to the season and like there wasn't a lot of turnover and they weren't great, but they weren't this bad. United was kind of a train wreck to begin with, so I'm not overly surprised by that.
They have the highest goal differential out of any team in the bottom half. They're one of two teams with a positive goal differential in the bottom half,
Yep.
Fulham being the other.
And it's like it's not even close. Like they're +6 and West Ham is -19 and Man
Mhm.
United is -9.
They have scored the sixth most goals in the league.
Yeah, I think it's Tottenham just based on expectation and status of the team. I think that's the right answer. But I think if United beat them in the finals of the Europa League, then they at least have something to celebrate.
Welcome to the Flag Stays Down podcast, cold intro edition, Cinco de Mayo edition. Got a full house. Matt lives to fight another day. Boys, it's Cinco de Mayo. And in honor of that, as we go around the horn here, I want to hear who your favorite Mexican player is. Parker, how you doing?
I'm great. Um, I am going to be as patriotic with this response as possible and say I do not have a favorite Mexican player. I represent America, and in America we celebrate things like Dos Acero. I'm drinking vodka today that was made in the great state of Colorado. So yeah, I don't celebrate that shit. Or the Mexican Marquez, one of the two, right? For obvious reasons. No, dude, I'm good. I'm doing good. It was a good weekend. It was just me and the little man for the first time ever. Wife went back to Minnesota, so it was just him and I kind of chilling, kicking it, um, watching Chelsea and watching some F1 and just doing our own thing. So it was fun. It was non-eventful. I kept him alive. I did my fatherly duties. But yeah, we just kind of Just hung out. So it was a good time. And I know I say this pretty much every time we win, but it's always a good weekend when Chelsea wins. Just makes everything better. And I know some of the circumstances of beating Liverpool after the hangover of them winning the league, but I take the win against anyone in the Premier League, and I take the win against a team that we haven't beaten very often with Liverpool. So take it any way we get it. Matt, it's still baby watch. How you hanging in there?
We're taking it, as I told people at work today who were shocked to see me when I rolled into the office. We're taking it hour by hour. Um, so the wife kind of thought she was having like a kind of one-off contractions, but nothing constant or anything like that last night. So kind of put a little bit more eagerness and anticipation into my mind today. But no, we both went to work and everything is good. Little man got to spend the day terrorizing grandma and grandpa. So it's a nice little precursor to what they'll have to deal with once the second baby arrives. So I appreciate them hanging in there and kind of sticking it through. But yeah, other than that, my wife's mom and sister came into town, so they spent the weekend with us. Um, it was a very big and important weekend for me. You guys know this about me. I love my grass. I love my yard. First cut of the year. It was fantastic. Everything looks decent. Still some work to do, but I do have the crispest edges of anybody in the neighborhood. So I definitely take pride in that. But yeah, big weekend. First grass cut, Chelsea win, all good. And whether you think this is a good thing or not, no baby yet. So we're not too overwhelmed yet. So it was pretty low key. Favorite Mexican player, I will take I will go the opposite of Parker and I will pick one. I will take Chicharito, but MLS Chicharito, not Man United Chicharito.
Welcome to the middle-aged white guy podcast. No, I don't celebrate Cinco de Mayo. I went out and cut my lawn this weekend. God, when did we get old?
Old man edition.
My favorite Mexican player is Landon Donovan in the Visa commercial wearing a Mexico jersey when the U.S. didn't qualify. So, vamos. No, my weekend was a blur. I spent it working in Nebraska, like I do every May. Household hazardous waste never quits, and when the team forgets to bring the giant overhead tent and you forget to put on sunscreen, it leads to a painful drive home after being outside all day. Um, got home about 2 a.m. Sunday, in bed about 2 a.m. Sunday back in Milwaukee, and woke up and the Chelsea game, like I said, is just kind of a blur. So today's my first real day back at it. Again, middle-aged white guy podcast. Well, boys, we got some stuff. We'll start with we'll skip the game. No one cares about us beating Liverpool. We do it all the time. Let's talk about the Chelsea Awards, where they named the player of the season as well as the academy/young player of the season. We do this quite frequently in our preseason pod, and then sometimes forget to address it in our postseason pod. But Moises Caicedo named your player of the season. Tyreek George, your young player of the season. Any complaints? Any changes you would make to? We'll start with player of the season.
Easy for me. He's been my model of consistency, been my player of the season. I know there's some arguments to be made, but what I think is cool is the fact that he was the players' player of the season as well as the player of the season. He took home both awards. So whenever there's that consensus look at the world, I think it just kind of shows to his leadership, his style of play, the intangibles he brings. But this season, I think it's not over yet, but like some of the defining characteristics of the season is trying to figure out like what the gel is and who is gelling together. And I think Moy is kind of starting to be some of the glue that holds this team together and kind of getting to be where he's a very important part. And it doesn't really matter where he plays, but his presence is kind of felt, even if he's suiting up at right back or if he's in the middle. And so he kind of bounced around a little bit when people started subbing in, later in that Liverpool match, which I just think it's a testament to him. He can play on the wing and go up against Gakpo and be a right back, and then he can move into a sort of defensive midfielder and then into more of a, more forward holding mid. Can do it all. So I think that game kind of summed up what he is to us.
Yeah, I don't think that there can really be any complaints with him as the player of the season. He does it week in and week out. I don't recall the last time he had a break. Like he is, if you're looking at who you're putting at on your starting 11 week by week, to me, he is number one on the team sheet. I think he's solidified his massive price tag. That was a big concern when he came in. I think he, if anything, now looking at it, we might have gotten a steal paying the fee for him. He's been that good, been as good as advertised, if not better. I like what he brings and the fact that he can do those multiple things. I don't necessarily agree with them, with him playing right back, but the fact that he can do it and still perform at the level that we are used to seeing him play, I think is really a testament to him and his game. So I personally don't have any complaints with Moy as player of the season. Young player of the season, who else are we gonna go with? It's
Gosh.
yeah. Tyreek George has played more than Achimpong. I think it's pretty cut and dry. I don't think that there is really much debate or really much competition for that. So I'm fine with it. I think it was a very kind of small list to choose from, but I think we've seen some very good moments out of him in a very young career. So I'm optimistic of what he can do going forward. So I think he's definitely earned that award.
So I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate with Caicedo. I I don't think it's a bad choice whatsoever. Um, but I wonder if it's more of a consistency thing. If you took a poll of the players um, in the first half of the season, I know a lot of these players aren't here anymore, or are relegated to the bench. But Christopher Nkunku was leading the team in scoring for a long time. Um, Cole Palmer was on a tear. Nicholas Jackson was on a tear. Uh, it's a joke I'm throwing Robert Sanchez. He was playing well in the beginning of the year. Um, Enzo Fernandez, I think, has come on after a rough month to start the year. I think he deserves a shout. Mark Cucurella, I think, has been equally as pivotal to this team as Moises Caicedo. Um, but going back to consistency, Cucurella did have a couple game stretch where he was okay. He wasn't lighting the world on fire. Caicedo has been consistently good. Um, so absolutely don't object to that. Matt, you're right on the young player of the year. There's not a whole lot of choice there. Parker, good shout on Josh Achimpong. Um, he's served a role in this team. Um, but I want to share with you guys the last, let's see, it's about 10 or I think it's the last 10 winners of this award. Let me know if you see a trend. Tyreek George, Alfie Gilchrist, Lewis Hall, Harvey Vale, Tino Livramento, Billy Gilmore, Connor Gallagher, Reese James, Mason Mount, Fikayo Tomori, Dominic Solanke. What can we predict about Tyreek George's future based on that list?
He gone.
He's good, but not good enough.
I think there are some really talented names in that list. There are names of players who are capped internationally, right? Uh, Solanke, as much as I hate to say it, has been pretty good for Spurs this year. He's stepped up. Tomori has been a rock. Mason Mount for a while was good until he left. Reece James, obviously, until he got injured. Conor Gallagher, staple in the England team. Billy Gilmore, staple for Scotland. Um, and then you get to some of the younger guys from the last couple of years. But Tyreek George has a future in front of him, absolutely. We also had a lot of wingers coming in, a lot of very talented wingers who are already representing their countries at the top level. Oh yeah, it would not surprise me if they cash in on him in the next year or so.
One thing I'll say, it Matt, you put it well that he didn't have a ton of competition this year, but Tyreek George scored a couple big goals for us when we needed some big goals. So I think that even if he had a little bit more competition, that's one of the things that kind of gets to push him over the edge. One thing though that I'll say to you guys, which I don't know exactly what cuts off as a young player because we have, the youngest team in the Premier League. But like guys like Levi Colwell didn't register in any of our brains, and Levi Colwell's 22. It's just kind of a funny thing. Like Tyreek George is 19, and I get that he looks and feels and acts like substantially younger, but we have a young team, and there's sort of a clear difference in like the guys who start for us week in and week out, just in my mind of what they bring to the table and like their leadership. Because like Levi Colwell this year felt like he's stepped up his leadership capabilities and qualities, and he kind of yells at people a little bit more, directs traffic a little bit more on the pitch, which I think is a good thing. He kind of has like future captain vibes that I get from him. So it's just one of those funny things. You forget how young some of our guys actually are, and some of these guys like Levi, who have been now consistent starter for 2 years, and he's only 22 years old.
The other name I will shout out if he didn't get injured this season, who I think would have been a promising name, would have been the Collins's favorite, Mark Gu. He's 19.
Yeah, and I should have clarified this is Academy Player of the Year.
Yeah,
Um, so it doesn't qualify for that. I think David Washington technically qualifies for that. Um, but I don't know, where is he? I don't even know.
That's interesting because like Tyreek, didn't he like graduate academy and like get a first team name
Yeah,
mid-season?
I think it's if you've played in the academy during the season,
Got
uh,
it.
came up through the academy and played a certain amount for the academy before graduating.
Gotcha. That makes more sense.
But I got to give Enzo Maresca credit. He has played, or he's given more academy players their debut than any of the previous six Chelsea managers this season. So I know he has his flaws, first year in the top flight. Um, but that's something people have been begging for a long time is trust the youth, give the youth a chance. And he has not been afraid to.
But that kind of goes, I think, and I don't have the stats to back this, but I'm guessing most of that's not in the Premier League. I'm guessing most of that's in the Conference League. So I think that we had this debate probably 3 or 4 weeks ago now, but do we, for the development of our team, not just for the money and the accolades or whatever, but are we hoping for Champions League football versus Europa League, right? And if we were in the Europa League next year, we would have the ability to develop more players and get more players more minutes like academy guys. And I think the Conference League was a great place for that. You mentioned Nkunku. I don't think Nkunku leads the team in goals if he's not playing in the Conference League. I don't think Mudryk has any of the goals that he has this year if he's not playing in the Conference League. So it's like, it's kind of a catch-22 on some of that stuff, right?
So in terms of getting to the Champions League, we did have that conversation. I think we were kind of torn, if I remember correctly, between wanting the Champions League but understanding the Europa League, maybe the next logical step. We are in the middle of a dogfight. Dog fight, boys. Could finish anywhere from third down to seventh. So automatic second.
Second.
Second. Yeah,
Arsenal could not finish in the top five.
yeah, technically, yes, I could. Okay. I'm not counting on second, but technically, yes. So in those spots currently, City third, Newcastle fourth, us in fifth, Forest in sixth, Villa in seventh. All those teams separated by 4 points. Chelsea currently 1 point off of City in third, but also only 3 points above Villa in seventh. So our remaining fixtures, as I pull them up here, obviously we've got Conference League semifinals where we're up 4-1 this week. That should be a rest game. Newcastle away on Sunday. United at home Friday. And then Forest away to finish the season on the 25th. How do we see those matches going? How many points do we get out of those remaining 3 Premier League games?
So I'll start it off. Last week when we had this debate, I said I could see us getting 4 points. It's harder to see us getting 4 points now that we have a win in hand, but I didn't know how that Liverpool game was going to go. So, I mean, it's going to be tough. I still feel like all of them can pull out wins, even though Man United doesn't have much to play for. So I'm going to count the Man United as a win, and then I'm going to just kind of split the middle and say draws against Newcastle and Forest. So I'd say 5 points.
It's it's so tough, and the reason why, like specifically, because of what Forrest has done over the last 2 games. Like they lost and they drew. So 1 point out of potential 6 in their last 2, like that is a huge boost to Chelsea. Depending on what like Forrest does, the Newcastle game, I could see that being a draw. I hope it's not, but I could see it. Um, you know, these are all teams with something to play for, and that's what makes it dangerous. I think if we wanna ensure, I think we at the very least need to draw against Nottingham Forest. At the very least, we can't let them leapfrog us, if possible. But again, I think it's gonna depend on how they do, right? If we get a point and they drop, then that's a 3 point cushion, which means even if they do pick up 3 points or whatever, and we end up tied on points for the season, they would have we have a +9 goal differential on them. So they'd have to somehow make that up. So there's so much to think about. And it's like, okay, now what are other teams doing? How much do we put forward with this? I think we're going to go for it. I don't see why we shouldn't. Um, I would say we get I would say we get 6.
So the win against United, I think we're all agreed on. Matt, where's the other 3 points coming from? Newcastle or Forest?
I don't know, but it has to come against one of them. Ideally, Newcastle. Um, just because right now they have us, or right now we're tied on goal differential. So if we can get that win, that gives us the boost also in goal differential. If for some reason we drop points and they pick it up, then hopefully goal differential still saves us. But I'm hoping it's against Newcastle. If not, then we need to make sure that we do it against Forest and hopefully in a big way.
And I'm with Parker. I think it's a draw against Newcastle. I'm going to sweep it with the win against United. I think it's a big win against Forest. 3-4 goals. Forest have absolutely imploded. I mean, they were sitting third comfortably a month ago. They've now, let's see, lost 3 out of their last 5, dropped points to Brentford, and then drew with Palace today. I don't think that they are ready to cope with the pressure. I don't think Nuno has drilled that team well enough. I think that they are out of steam. Um, whereas we were in this battle last year. A lot of these guys went through this last year of chasing European football. They responded. So we've been through this. We have players coming back healthy. We've got the depth. We've got the legs. I think it's a big win on the final day to secure it. So I'm going 6 points or 7 points actually.
One thing that's interesting that I wanted to look up because I didn't know how it fell, but if we beat Djurgården and go forward, I wanted to see when that Conference League final is, and it is after the Nottingham Forest game. It's not a lot after, it's 3 days after, so that'll be kind of interesting. But it's the 28th of May, and we play on the 25th against Forest. So whatever happens in the league will be locked up at that point, which I think is good. It's better than playing midweek in a final in Poland or something. I don't remember where that game is, but it's somewhere. And then having to travel back and be on a couple days rest. So I'm happy for that fact.
So let's look at Newcastle. Newcastle, uh, you know, 2 out of 3 majority here we've got as a draw. Then they have Arsenal away and Everton at home to win the season. How does Newcastle do in those remaining 2 matches?
So without hijacking this, I'm so concerned. I'm curious about Arsenal because Arsenal's calendar is Liverpool and then Newcastle and then Southampton. So they'll get a win out of that. But they only have a 3 point cushion on City and a 4 point cushion on Newcastle and us. If Arsenal lose to Liverpool, which is a very solid possibility, they're going to be in a fight, the same fight all of us are in. So, you mean, Collins, you said second, you're not counting on it, but like the way Arsenal season wraps up is not easy either. So I think if they lose to Liverpool, they have to come, guns a-blazing against Newcastle. And then Newcastle's got, a fight on their hands because I think like the kind of the nightmare scenario for those two fan bases is if Newcastle loses to us and Arsenal loses to Liverpool, now, they're fighting.
Yeah, and I'm looking at City right now, and they've got Southampton, which that should be an easy win. They have the FA Cup final on the 17th, and then Bournemouth on the 20th. And Bournemouth still has something to play for. Like they're still in contention to creep up to top six potentially. Um, and then Fulham. So I mean, it's a relatively easy schedule. Forest has what I would consider a very easy schedule aside from us. And that is a little bit concerning because I think that's 6 points that they can pick up against a Leicester team who doesn't really have anything to play for. Um, and then West Ham, who is I think 16th or 17th right now. So th- they're going up against on paper relatively easy competition. We know nothing's easy in the Premier League, but they do have a more favorable schedule than the other teams that are kind of fighting for that spot, that top four spot.
Is it not written in the stars, though, that they have to go up against Enzo Maresca's former team? Connection there. And then they have to face Graham Potter, former Chelsea manager. And then they face us.
The Premier League script writers are back at it.
That might be 0 points.
Who knows? That's what I'm saying. Like all this stuff, there are so many scenarios that we can just think of just looking at the matchups, and we're like, well, this happens, this happens. It's like wild card weekend in the NFL, right? Well, if this team wins, what are your chances of getting in? This team has to win, this team has to lose, you have to win or tie, or like it's just ridiculous. Um, so it's hard to understand. And with the race being so tight between, more or less third and eighth for that for those European spots, it's up in the air right now. There's a lot of teams that are going to be going for it, and each match we say that the match at the beginning of the season is just as important as at the end. These feel like they count more. They count the same, but they feel like they count so much more.
So just a side observation. Is Graham Potter, does he have the biggest fall off of any English manager ever? The man was touted to be the next England manager. And now he's won, I think, 3 games in total in his 4 months in charge at West Ham.
I mean, until someone can point a worse fall off in my direction, like yeah, I think he obviously did solid things at Brighton, which caught a lot of people's attention and eyes, but wasn't the man for the job at Chelsea and has had kind of a stumble since then. But Graham Potter to me kind of feels like a guy that's going to be around a long time and be a consistent, yo-yo manager or mid-level manager, someone who manages teams from 14th in the Premier League to promotion in the championship kind of a guy. He's not going to be top on anyone's list, but he's going to, help bring some things out of guys and help kind of right ships at times, but he's not a miracle worker. And yeah, it's not like the perfect solution for people's problems.
Is
Well,
David?
almost like a young Roy Hodgson.
I like that. I was gonna say David Moyes,
David Moyes was the guy that came to my head. That's who I had him penned in as.
Roy Hodgson. What a shout! All right, so looking at it, it basically what it comes down to is Chelsea control their destiny. Got 2 matches against teams that are in a similar scrap as us, and then United. And now the more I think about it, the more the United game scares me. Um, but let's turn our attention to away from the future into the past. We won. We're the first team to beat Arne Slot's Liverpool by more than 1 goal. So just let that sink in for a moment. Cole Palmer breaks the streak with a late penalty. Enzo Fernandez shows off his Frank Lampardedness with a run into the box to score the opener. And I forgot who even scored the second one. One goal.
Virgil van Dijk off of a
Yes.
defender.
Amazing. Amazing.
Wonder strike, mind you.
So if you had to pick a highlight of this game, and I ask you guys this every week, what stood out to you the most in this one?
I, to me, I would say two things. Um, Number one was the way that we felt, I think, in control for a very good amount of that game. Um, yeah, there were stretches where Liverpool was on the offensive, which it's going to happen. That's just the nature of the game. But for the most part, I didn't feel like we were ever really out of control. And that's something that we've kind of been wanting to see for a few months. And kind of during that dip in form, we didn't really see that. And going up against the Premier League champions on their crowning game, whatever we want to call it, that says a lot about, I think, where this team has gotten to as far as kind of getting out of that slump and that bad run of form. So I think that is a definite huge positive. The second thing is the penalty. You have Moises Caicedo, who has been busting his ass for 94 minutes. And all of a sudden, he just takes a gamble on a ball in Liverpool's own box and gets a penalty drawn. What more do you want the guy to do? Like that just shows who he is and what he does. Um, to me, that just speaks volumes about kind of where this team is. And then you have Cole Palmer stepping up, looking confident, taking it. Like that's the other thing. He didn't look nervous or like he's been in a bad run of form. He looked confident taking that ball and sliding it home. That's what we want to see. And then to wrap it all up, and I'm sorry if I'm stealing the thunder of one of you two guys, The celebration was fantastic after that penalty. I'll leave it at that.
What counts?
because Robert Sanchez was involved. Um, so it's not my biggest takeaway, but the one thing I enjoyed, and we talked a lot about something similar in the Champions League win over City when we're in the tunnel, and City are just kind of loosey goosey, and Chelsea players stoic in a perfectly straight line. Guard of honor, Enzo Fernandez just standing there, no applause. That's my captain. Love it. But I think my biggest takeaway, similar to what Matt said about being in control, was our shape. We held our shape. We have not done that. When we concede, it's because we are all over the place. When we're starting to look like U7 players, everybody chasing the ball, kind of a deal. Stayed in formation for the bulk of that game, and that's what frustrated Liverpool. Frustrated them so much, Mark Cucurella left Trent in his dust and kicked him out of the country.
You go. Yeah, I think there's a lot of takeaways because I think overall it was a really positive result. And I said this, in the intro, you play a hangover team, they have nothing, truly nothing to play for, which is, the downside of this system, the non-playoff system, but it is what it is. So you're playing against someone that doesn't have to go out. They could field the team full of 12-year-olds for all they care. It doesn't matter at all. But they didn't. They played a squad that was respectable, and it still felt like Liverpool. So our defense looked great. The fact that Caicedo locked down Gakpo and Cucurella pretty much locked down Salah was fantastic. I thought our press was better than it has been in several weeks. But the standout thing to me was just the amount of chances created. Um, Liverpool don't give up a lot of chances, a lot of good chances. And you look at the stats, and we created a good amount of chances in this game. Um, Obviously, don't take them all, but you don't have to take them all. It's about creating, it's about attacking. I thought our wing play was great. I think one of the unsung things that Maresca has done is this weird experiment of having Noni be on the left. And it it's working, and I don't know how and why it's working, but it kind of is. And he looks awkward out there on the left, and he wants to be on his left foot so he doesn't cross in his. I don't know. I don't get it, but it feels like it's working, and Neto's being better on the right. So we're creating chances. I thought everyone kind of played in their own system and bounds in the game, and yeah, it's just starting to kind of click through. And guys like Nico had chances, guys like Enzo had chances, and everyone in between. So that stood out in a big way to me.
So you mentioned some guys that caught my eye. Maybe not for the best of reasons. Some of them, yeah. Some of them, no. Um, but I will say, despite the win, that our mentality issue seems to be a problem. Uh, and I put them in kind of three camps. You got the Caicedo camp of nothing phases the man, like he doesn't show any emotion. I mean, he showed a little bit at the end of the match, right? But in the game, he could murder somebody and not show any emotion. Um, then you've got players like Enzo Fernandez, Mark Cucurella, Levi Colwell, who get fired up and seem to play a little bit better when they're fired up. And then you have people like Nicholas Jackson and Noni Madueke, who, for lack of a better term, are mental midgets, emotional midgets, small people. Sorry. Um, and I don't know if it's good to have that diverse of a squad in terms of mentality, or if it's something that needs to be corrected or fixed in the transfer window. What do you guys think?
This is the first time I've heard you say something negative about Nico, so I'm a little taken back by that.
Well,
So
let
you've
me let me set the
kind of
stage
thrown me off my
for
game a little bit.
let me set the stage. he didn't have a great game to begin with. He's coming off of what 13 games without a goal, except for the last two. He scored in the last two, right? Offsides stupidly 3 times in about 10 minutes. Like not even close. Like not even watching the play. Gets subbed off and pouts his way around the pitch. That's what I mean by mental midget. He's a guy who runs on confidence, runs on streaks. But when he's not on one, it's pretty cringy to watch.
Yep. You're not telling me anything new on that. It and Noni is the same way. And we know we've talked about for a long time about Noni's issues. When he's on, he's on. Same with Nico. When they're on, they're on. When they're not, or when somebody misses an opportunity to play them in or whatever, they throw up their hands, they start bitching instead of going back and doing their job. You can't have both. Like you can't have everything your way. And to be completely honest, the reason why they're not getting played in some of those scenarios is because their team doesn't trust them to actually finish. Like, sorry, but like you give them opportunity after opportunity. If you're not putting them away, they're going to try and do something else with it that might end up in a better result. So I don't like I understand being hard on yourself. That I can live with. But when you start projecting that to your teammates, that's a different ball game. And I think that's where we're at with Nico and Noni. And we've seen it even with Cole Palmer. And Palmer not as much. His is more just like you should have made that run. I could have played you there. Like he's trying to help to tell them where he thought that they were going to go, where he thought that they should have gone. It's a little bit different, but kind of in the same boat. It's something that I think needs to be addressed. And if, these specific players can't adjust themselves to work in a team environment, good or bad, they're not going to have a future here because Maresca is not the type of coach to really put up with a lot of bullshit.
I'm happy you brought up Palmer because if you didn't, I was going to, Matt, because I think to a lesser degree he has done that during stretches of this year, and I think he's growing through that. Like I think this is part of his development, and he's kind of learning what his role is, and that he's doesn't always have to be the guy for the moment. And he was the guy for the moment for so many times earlier this season and all of last season that if he wasn't getting the ball in those situations, he was pouting about it because he's like, you guys aren't doing this, so I have to, right? I have to be this guy. And if he wasn't that guy, then they didn't score. I think he's kind of letting the game come to him a little bit more, and he's learning that he doesn't have to be that guy for every moment, and his time will come if he kind of lets it. I don't have much else to say about Noni or Nico. All I'll say is like there is room on teams for different personalities, and then it's on your captain truly to be able to manage those emotions. And like I'll just use a silly example in a basketball sense, but like for every Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, there's a Dennis Rodman. And those guys are hard to manage sometimes. They are erratic and they do want to go to Vegas and, you know, party with prostitutes. Like they do. And they want to miss practice in doing so. But you need them. You need them to play their role, and you need to find a way to work with them and manage them. And it's not always going to be the right person for every situation. I'm not saying Noni is the right person for our situation, but it's on our guys to kind of like work that through and figure that out and see, is this a guy that I can live with? Matt, you and I played with an outside who was very much that way at Oshkosh, right? Like he wasn't the nicest person to be around all the time, but he boy did he could get some stuff done on the court, right? And you just find a way to work with it, and they're not going to be everyone's favorite, and it can suck sometimes, but like you're a team, you're a unit, and you kind of figure it out. So the thing that sort of rest my laurels on and just try to think through with this team is Noni and Nico are still very young. They are still children that were given tens of millions of dollars to play a game. They're still immature. They still have a lot of growing up to do. And our team is still kind of figuring all that out. You know, a lot of the past 2 seasons have been trial by fire and just having people, young folks, figure it out. And so I think we're still doing that. And as our captains kind of like emerge through this fire, I think it'll either figure itself out or it won't. And like you said, Matt, that's from the manager will part ways with those kinds of guys.
I've seen a lot of calls to part ways with, well, and it wasn't both of them at the end of this game. But throughout the year, there's been calls we've called for both those guys at some point to be out. Both of them need someone to push them. You know, Nico has been the lone striker for a year and a half now. Mark Yu, losing Mark Yu, even though he was just kind of a bit piece, having him available to play would have been big. Um, Now going out and signing an established striker, quote unquote, this year um, would be nice, right? And Osimhen, Gyökeres, Chesko, Jonathan David, I saw is on a free this year. Um, Somebody to push Nico would be nice. I think the same can be said for Noni. We lost Mudryk, uh, João Felix, and Christopher Nkunku. Well, one has left physically and one has left mentally. Um, there's no depth at the wing. And Noni, you guys are right. When he's on, and it's good. And I think you need some of those guys in your team. Um, but I looked at the other side of the pitch, and Pedro Neto, when he was getting frustrated, it wasn't all right. I'm just going to try to beat every single defender I've got on me. It was cool. I'm just going to turn up the intensity by the power of 10, right? Still whipping in crosses, still being a team player. It was an interesting contrast. And I think I'd throw Neto in that Enzo Fernandez group of, the fire builds fire kind of thing. But in the topic of transfers, Trent Alexander-Arnold, as I mentioned, announces today, Cinco de Mayo, the day after getting cooked by Marc Cucurella, that he's leaving for Real Madrid, something we knew has been happening for a while. And it's on a free. A lot of reaction on Liverpool Twitter. I haven't spoken to our friend Joe about it yet today, but I can't imagine his reaction. He's a very Enzo Fernandez-esque guy. If there was a Chelsea player in this current squad 5-10 years down the road, this happened to, leaves on a free for Real Madrid, a Barcelona, something like that. Who is the one that you would miss the most? Who is the one that bring a tear to your eye to see him go?
I'll say the one guy that it's easy to kind of dismiss him right now just because of all the injuries, but the guy who has been linked to going to Real Madrid, which is Reece James. Um, I think he's the only to me he's the only comp to TAA just because Reece was playing with the club since he was 8 or 7 or whatever it was. Chelsea captain kind of a guy. And then if he leaves on a free to go to Real, I think it's tough. Um, it it surprises me just because clubs don't let people like that leave on frees. We've talked about that with some of our guys and just some of the business that you have to kind of do if you get to a place like this. So it's incredibly surprising that he's leaving on a free, and it's an asset that you're not getting to cash out on if you're Liverpool. So I think it's foolish for them to allow this to happen like this. Um, so I would say Reece, but not in your 8-9 year period. I would say if Reece left in 3 years, I don't know what his contract looks like, but if he left in 2-3 years and went to Madrid, I think that would it would be the guy I miss the most. just because he's been here for so long.
That's who I was going to say, and I think it's along the same lines. A lot of these players are brand new to Chelsea. We don't have the emotional attachment to them like we do with Reece James. Um, and I think that's kind of where this is at. I mean, is that going to develop with a lot of these players? Absolutely, because a lot of them are locked into 7, 8 year deals, so they're going to be here for quite a while. Um, I think Reece is the obvious one. If I have to look at somebody else who I think might be comparable, I think that would be probably Moises Caicedo. Just because he gives me N'Golo Kante vibes, and like I was very sad to see N'Golo Kante go. Like I know why everything kind of happened, but the guy that you always cheer for, right? And you really don't have anything bad to say about him. I could see that. I could see Moises Caicedo being in that same kind of caliber as N'Golo Kante. So he would be my other pick.
I think the view on this is going to be different 5 years from now. When we are theoretically back at the top of European football. Um, we're going to be looking at a lot of these guys who are with the team now as these are the guys who brought us through that dark time. Enzo Fernandez, I think, is that guy 5 to 7 years from now. If he leaves, if he goes on a free, the club mismanages contract like Rudiger's, and he ends up walking. He's a guy who has shown passion for the club every step of the way. Even starting with his announcement signing Fabrizio Romano. Um, that was a chills moment, and so for me, it's him. But I think Reece James, yeah, is the easy answer. He's the easy comp. Those two, TAA and Reece James, have been compared their entire careers, which is actually
We
leads
give
me.
an honorable mention.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, can we give an honorable mention to Bobby Sanchez? I'm just gonna shed one. Just if he left, man, oh my, I would just lose some sleep over that one.
So comparing Reece James and Trent Alexander-Arnold.
I'm throwing a Cinco de Mayo party when that happens.
This so leads me to my last topic. Anything else, boys? TAA in the media is being heralded as the best right back to ever play in the Premier League. I think he has his issues. I don't think he's a great defender. I think he's probably more of a midfielder. Who would you say is the best right back to have ever played in the Premier League?
Wow.
I mean, that's a hard question to answer without like doing some research, but like I don't think he's the best right back of his era. Like I think Reece James has consistently been better than him throughout all of this. So if you're not the best in your era, like you ain't the best all the time. Not in my book.
I already have somebody who I would put ahead of both of them strictly because of longevity, and I think for I think he kind of changed the way that right backs are viewed. To me, I would put Kyle Walker up there. His longevity, his ability to be able to do it. He's still one of the faster players in the Premier League, or he was at 34 years old, however old he is. And the fact that he's able to make those bombing runs down the flank. And is a pretty good defender, or he was a pretty good defender in his time. And he did it for a long time. He was very consistent at it. He was a threat both ways. To me, I would say Kyle Walker. If you get rid of Reese's injuries, then yeah, I would say Reese. But to me, right now, current state, I would say Kyle Walker would be above them.
So I had three in mind. Kyle Walker was number one for me. This is not one of them, but I thought it was interesting based on PFA Team of the Year selections. Trent has had three, 19, 20, and 22. The leader in that category, right back, Gary Neville, six. Now I fucking hate Gary Neville, so he will never make the top of any list for me. But there are two Chelsea guys who I think are better right backs. One is Ivanovic, the other is Dave. Now, they didn't revolutionize the position like TA and Kyle Walker did in that, but they are out and out defenders who will fuck you up.
They are so and that's the other thing. Like, are we talking about what we consider a right back today or what we consider a right back, 10 years ago? Because those are two completely different positions now. But I would agree. So, obviously with Dave, we all know and love Dave. Like he was an absolute rock as a right back. Bronislav, you just didn't want to get close to him because he might kill you. Um, but again, very solid right backs, but Kyle Walker more or less kind of invented, I wouldn't say invented, but he kind of helped usher in a new way to think about that right back position and being able to attack and move forward and be able to be utilized in that attacking prowess. Yeah, I don't think TAA. I think TAA is he is I don't have an equivalent for him, but if you take away his wonder strikes, he's Marcus Alonso.
So he is the best.
This isn't a left back conversation.
No, but like that's what it is. Like if you take away Alonso's like volley goals and like all like that stuff or the free kicks, you take that away, average at best. That's kind of the comparison that I think of when I hear about Trent Alexander-Arnold.
One of the things about TAA is he's 26, so he still has a lot of career ahead of him. If TAA left Liverpool and went to, I don't know, Brighton or somewhere, and stayed in the Premier League and played another 8 years in the Premier League, I think he'd have a shot at becoming, one of the best right backs in Premier League history. But I feel like at 26, he just doesn't have that like staying power, and he'll be remembered by being on a very solid Liverpool team and being a Liverpool great, but I don't think he's going to cross into that threshold of being a Premier League great. Just I think it's recency bias why we're talking about it now. In 10 years, people are going to remember a lot of the other names that you guys said over him, I think.
It's funny you mentioned Brighton. Immediately, I was like, oh, I might even put James Milner ahead of TAA
Woo.
as a legitimate right back, as the position is not a right wing back, but as a right back, I could see it.
All right, boys. I remember to put up a man of the match poll. I was reminded that I missed somebody. Thank you to Hector from the Milwaukee Blues for pointing out I forgot to put Moises Caicedo in there. So we'll leave it with five options for you guys. Lavia, Enzo, Palmer, Chalaba, Caicedo. Who's your man of the match?
Caicedo.
I really wanted to give it to Enzo, but I felt like he had the best 55 minutes of our team and then kind of faded away into the match. Maybe just wasn't as required in the match. I'm just going to give an honorary shout to the guy who got his goal and got a little bit of his swagger back at a time when we need him most, because we need Cole Palmer to kind of come alive in these next three. So I feel like this goal is going to be a critical one. So I'm giving it to Cole Palmer.
And I went Lavia, for a guy who's been out long stretches over the last 2 years. A guy who was coveted by Liverpool before being the second midfielder to turn them down in a matter of weeks. Um, and then for him to rile up the Liverpool fans as he's being subbed off with a big smile on his face. It's good to see a smile on that man's face. Um, he was my man of the match. But Cole Palmer runs away with it. 55% of the votes. Lavia second at 32. Chalaba with 9. Enzo with 1 vote. And Caicedo with 1 vote. So we'll say the sixth position gets 2 votes there. Make sure to check out our polls at Flag Down Pod. I'll run them throughout the season when I remember to. Boys, any closing thoughts this week?
Gonna be a hell of a end of the season. It's funny because we are all husbands, and we are all, yeah, our spouses are all moms, and so it's Mother's Day on Sunday, and we've got a big match against Newcastle. So I don't know how I can finagle this to Happy Mother's Day, like going to the pub and watching the game, but I'm gonna try.
I mean, your child's name is Enzo, so you can play that at any time.
I'm banking on my wife having our second kid so that we just have to stay home and I can at least watch the game. So
Well, for the second straight week, Matt, I hope I don't see you next week. Parker, looking forward to solo potting.
Later, boys.
here, guys.
Later.